lọ ni mọ́mì. Ojú ẹlẹ́gba, ojú ẹlẹ́gba. Ojú ẹlẹ́gba. Ojú ẹlẹ́gba, ojú ẹlẹ́gba, ojú ẹlẹ́gba.
It's legendary beats.
They know my story. From old dog studio, I be hustle to work. Say, me do a legba, oh, me and Silly. From old dog studio, we been hustle to work. Say, me do a legba, oh, my people dead, my people suffer. Them they pray for blessing. Hey, me do a legba, oh, my people dead. Them they pray for blessing.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming to Safe Border Academy. For those online, thank you very much for tuning in. Welcome to Day 2, Data Fest Kampala. And my name is Shakib Nsubuga. I'll be your MC for the evening. So we're really excited to host Data Fest at Safe Border. Safe Border is, we believe, data is at the forefront of our experiences and our activities. And the theme, living with data, is also something that we believe is really important. How do we use data to make business decisions? How do we ensure that the data that we that we have is kept safely and used for the right reasons? And so many other things. So we're really excited to have everyone, to have you guys. I just want to, read out the profiles of the people that are really going to be presenting today. So first off, today we'll have, our first speaker today will be Simon Robertson, who is the VP of Analytics at Safe Border. Simon specializes in running experiments, growth forecasting, running analysis in Stata. Recently, he's gotten really into building data tools in Google App Script. Prior to Safe Border, Simon had worked for 3 Nobel Prize winners. So no pressure to our CEOs to ensure that they also get to that same level. Then we'll also interact with Samuel Nabigwako. Samuel specializes in data analytic techniques in fraud detection and finance data. He holds a Bachelor's of Science in Software Engineering from Makerere University. And then we'll also be interacting with Alex Muganyizi. And Alex basically specializes in running analysis for driver operations and payments. He's into developing machine learning models and uses Python. Alex holds a degree in Bachelor's in Computer Engineering from Busitama University. So these are the people we'll be hearing will be presenting to us. And without further ado, I want to call up our first presentation. That's going to be by Simon Robertson. If you can just give him a round of applause as he comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakib. Oh no, what happened? It died right now. It's the worst timing. It's gonna come? We're confident? Hey, there we go. Great. Are we live on Zoom as well? Great. Can people type in questions if they want? Or let me know if any questions come through in the chat. That'd be great. Yeah? Great. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. Okay, let me get started. So, first of all, I'm going to assume that everyone knows who we are as Safe Border. I'm not going to go through an introduction to Safe Border. And what I'm going to talk about is a little bit of who I am and what I do at Safe Border. I'm going to talk about, go on the other side. I'm going to talk about what we do with data and what the BI and analytics team, sometimes known as the data team at Safe Border, does. And then going to talk about our data architecture and our analytics architecture. So this is really, whenever you use the SafeBoda app, where does your data go and how is it used? I'm going to talk about all the different places that we use your data. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about analysis for decision making, which is the central thing that I want to talk about today. And I'm going to give an example about how to make decisions, how to run analysis that will help you make decisions around. I'm going to use the example of passenger cancellation, which is something that has always been a problem at SafeBoda. It's something we always need to make decisions about. I put no graphs. I was hoping that I would have some graphs ready, but unfortunately I don't. But actually, it doesn't really. All right, let's go. So, there's like a variety of different things that I work on. The main two are these ones in orange. You'll see anything at SafeBoda, the main ones are always in orange. So my two are BI and Analytics and Marketplace. So BI and Analytics is the data team. So that is Edward and Alex, who are going to present after me and show one of the tools that we use. Also, shout out to Janet and Evans, also on the team. Unfortunately, not here today. So that's the team I'm going to talk about mostly today. The other teams I work on is a team called Marketplace, which is about how we optimize the SafeBoda platform. This is the driver dispatch, how we match, when you make a request, how we match you to a driver, and how we do that in the most efficient way possible. And also how our pricing calculation works. So when you make a request, it gives you an estimate for how much that request is going to cost. All of the logic and thought that goes behind that all sits with the Marketplace team. Okay, I also run some interdepartmental teams. So the fraud team, which Edward, who is presenting later, is very, very involved in. So detecting any fraud on any of our platform in any of our locations. I also work a little bit on information security and also with any external researchers. One thing we get a lot of SafeBoda is academics, researchers from NGOs wanting to collaborate with us on various projects. That's something that I handle as well. Okay, so BI and Analytics at SafeBoda. So there's kind of three things that we do. Number one is operations. So every department at SafeBoda needs data for their operations. Data is something that really needs to breathe through the company because everyone needs it and everyone needs access to it. This is actually what we use Metabase for, which we're going to talk about later. So there are many, many examples of this. Obviously, our driver performance teams needs to be able to retrieve data to check the performance of drivers. The call center needs data on our customers to see if a customer is calling, who is that customer, how long have they been on the platform, etc. Our finance team, they need data to pay our bonuses to our drivers, and for various reasons, every single department needs access to data, and the BI Analytics team is, that's our role to make sure everyone is provided. Okay, number two, the second thing that we do is metrics and KPIs. So this is really important. They're like your eyes and your ears to monitor the performance of everything that you're doing. Are we going in the right direction or the wrong direction? Right? Without any metrics or KPIs, that can be very, very hard to judge. Number two is for setting goals. This is something that we use KPIs for all the time, is having a really clear aim for one thing that we are looking to achieve, right? It could be a number of rides per day, or it could be a certain completion rate. It could be, a certain goal within the call center. And so the power of metrics is often to galvanize a team around a single goal and a single metric that you're looking at that you want to achieve. Okay, and the third thing we use metrics, KPIs for, is for finding problems, right? Sometimes there might be an issue with your platform or an issue with your operations. And with a product as large as SafeBoda, you can't always just rely on things being informed to you, right? We are a company that is doing thousands and thousands of rides per day. So sometimes there are stories going out there that you never find out about or that you can't notice. So metrics is a key way that we can observe exactly what's going on with our platform and to quickly diagnose if something has gone wrong. Okay, and then the third one, and this is what I like more than the other two, this is my favorite one, is analysis. So we do some consulting services for every department to try and help them to use data to achieve their goals, right? So what problems do you have? What decisions are you thinking about making, right? How can we use data to inform those decisions, right? Often decision makers within organizations, you're constantly in a position where you have to make a judgment on something, and that can be very, very difficult. Often you don't have a lot of information, right? And so it's really our job as a department to see what can we tell from the data that we have that are going to help inform that decision. And that's what I'm going to talk about after. So yeah, so the first two, I think these are the pieces that we try and automate as much as possible, right? This is one thing that we use Metabase for. To make sure that we are not, every time someone wants a piece of data, my team doesn't have to go and write a new script to pull that data for them, to have tools that are set up so that people can go and retrieve things for themselves, to make sure our metrics and our KPIs are automated. Every day, they just appear. You get the numbers that you need, or you get the graphs that you need. We've definitely made progress on this in the last year from the days when we were filling in a lot of Google Sheets every day. So yeah, this top section we try and automate as much as possible. The last section, analysis, is a section that you really can't automate. This is about like how do you dive into a specific problem that you have and use data to try and get some information on what decision you should make. So that's the one I'll talk about in a little bit. All right, SafeBoda data architecture. Okay, so this is slightly complicated graph is exactly how data at SafeBoda works. Okay, so let me talk through all the different components on this. I'm going to go quite quickly because there's quite a lot in here. But essentially, every time you use SafeBoda app, this is just passenger app. Driver app is slightly different. Driver app doesn't have these two. It only has the top one. But yeah, every time you use SafeBoda app, it goes to a few different places. So the first and main one is our production database, or I should say production databases. So we have, this data is stored by our engineering team in a variety of different Postgres databases. And then that is available to the engineering team at all times. The production databases are then connected to two places. So number one is SafeBoda Portal. This is a tool that we have built ourselves that can show us a variety of things about each customer and each driver. It will show, for example, for a customer, it will show their complete order history, like where they've been picked up, where they've been dropped off, how much each trip cost. This is something that our team in the call center can use. Or whenever an issue is raised, that we can go to this and try and find out exactly what happened. It also has a nice live map of where our drivers are. It's got some it's got some cool features, the SafeBoda portal. It also can send information back to the production databases. It can do a few things, make some payments, send some transfers. Yeah, so this is an internal tool that we have. The second place that the production database goes each day is to our analytics database. So this is what my team have real control over. It's like a daily update. The production database is just copied every day into the analytics database. This is what everyone that works at SafeBoda will use the most when they use Metabase. This is only updated once a day, so we don't have data. We don't have live data in the analytics database. We just have data from the day before, but going all the way back to when the SafeBoda platform was launched. Okay, the analytics database is connected to a few different things. Number one, we have Power BI, which is Microsoft tool that we use for some metrics. It's not extensively rolled out at SafeBoda, but for example, if you wanted to look up the passenger cohort retention, so seeing month on month how many of our passengers are coming back to us at SafeBoda and retaining, you'll be able to find that in Power BI. Okay, the second tool and this is the one that we use most extensively, and the one that my team are going to talk about in a little while, is Metabase. Metabase is an open source software where essentially it's just pulling directly from the analytics database. My team can write all the code that sits behind Metabase. And then for the user, which is all the people that work at SafeBoda, they can go to Metabase and they can easily extract data, right? And so they can just enter in a few, like maybe some dates or some parameters, and then they can just download the data that they need, and they can use it for whatever purpose they need to use it for. The other place that's connected to Metabase is Google Sheets. We have a very key set of metrics. Most departments have their own set of metrics. So like we have food and shop metrics. We have what we call SafeBoda metrics, which is everyone. We have payments metrics. We have a little script, the Google App script that I love so much, that pulls the data from Metabase every day and puts it into Google App script so that every morning when we come in, we can immediately see how many rides we did the day before. The payments team can see how many transactions they did the day before. All of that is now all automated, so like people can come and they can see immediately what happened as of yesterday and how they're progressing. Okay, the other thing that we do is when we do analysis, this is done both by the BI and analytics team. It's also done by people across all departments at SafeBoda. They can pull data from Metabase and they can run analysis on it. It's really dealer's choice for which software you use. My team have different preferences. I use something called Stata. That's because I'm an old school economist. I don't think it's a very trendy tool anymore, but that's how I typically analyze data, make graphs. Others on my team, so Evans is Tableau mostly. Alex, Jupyter Notebooks guy. And then often we just use Google Sheets as well. Often Google Sheets is like if you're just trying to make a graph as quickly as possible, Google Sheets can be a really good tool for that. Okay, and then finally I'll talk about the bottom left. So these are the other two. These are the external tools that we use, right? At SafeBoda, it's not really possible for us to build everything that we want ourselves, right? The SafeBoda portal is an example of where we did build something ourselves, but it was like a very extensive project for the engineering team. We have some other things that we wanted to do where we have contracted third-party suppliers to help us. So one is AppsFlyer, and AppsFlyer is an attribution tool. What it helps us know is when you register with SafeBoda and when you take a trip, where did you come from before you downloaded the SafeBoda app, right? What AppsFlyer does is connect it to Google and Facebook, and it can tell, did you see a Facebook ad or a Google ad before you joined SafeBoda? And it's actually really, really helpful for us to know like how effective our digital marketing is, right? So now we can see from our Facebook ads, so I don't know if anyone's ever used the Facebook digital marketing platform. It can tell you like how many impressions did you get and how many clicks did you get. What it can't tell is how many people actually registered with the app and how many of those people actually used it. That's what AppsFlyer does. So it helps link together these two pieces, and it tells us of our digital marketing, how many are actually registering and how many are actually using the app. And then number 2 is CleverTap. So CleverTap is a marketing and analytics tool. It's very, very helpful. So on the marketing side, it's what we use to send all of our push notifications, right? I think anyone that has a SafeBoda app knows that we really like sending push notifications to our customers. We use it very extensively. These are all sent through CleverTap. So it's actually the system that we use to define who we want to send push notification to. It's how we define our push notification campaigns. And it's actually the mechanism we use for sending those push notifications. The other thing that CleverTap is really useful for is what we call funnels. So the CleverTap has very, very granular events data for the clicks, the individual clicks on the SafeBoda screen. So something we can't tell with our production database is, for example, how many people enter their phone number but then don't enter their OTP verification code, right? We don't have that stored in the analytics database, but we can see in CleverTap how many people get to the verification screen, but then don't get to the next screen, right? So this is a really good way for us to analyze different issues that we're having with certain screens or certain apps, with certain pages on the app. Yeah, so like CleverTap also has this functionality for funnels. So those are two third-party softwares that we use. I don't know if anyone has any questions at that stage about any of these tools. Is there anything on the Zoom chat? Do we have any questions from the Zoom? Are we okay? All right, then let me move on. So this is really the main thing I want to talk about, which is analytics for decision making, how to do this and how to do this well. And so I want to talk about passenger cancellation. And well, one of the reasons that I want to talk about this actually is that since I joined SafeBoda, we've hired a few analysts, and this is actually the question that we give when we send out our like test exercise to candidates. So I have actually read, I don't know, maybe 60, 70 different PowerPoint presentations from potential SafeBoda analysts about passenger cancellation. So I think I just have a lot of bugbears about how people think about passenger cancellation and how we should really go about answering this question. Okay, so number one. So this is the type of question that we get all the time as an analytics team from all our departments. Will be something like, passenger cancellation has increased from 10% of requests up to 15% of requests in the last 2 months. What do I do next, right? We're often thrown these questions that are kind of like a little bit vague, right? This one's not that vague because it's kind of got some information in it, but like, you know, someone has seen this in the metrics, they've identified that there's a problem, right? And then this is what they give us. And it's from my team to then try and think about, like, how do we go about answering this question or providing a solution? Okay, so steps that we should go through. Number one, look at the data. What are the trends? Okay? Absolutely not. Don't do that. That is a terrible idea. And that is like the main thing that we get all the time for people that just like produce graph on graph to try and work out what's going on in passenger cancellation, right? People that dive straight into the data and think that they'll be able to like just like randomly find the answer or find a solution to this. This very, very rarely works, in my opinion, right? What this ends up with, and this is what I get all the time in the cancellation, is an analysis where the main takeaway is something like cancellation is higher on Sundays than other days, right? Because that's the type of graph someone makes, is they break down the cancellation rate by day of the week, and they see the cancellation is higher on Sundays. And then like you tell that to someone who's maybe like, you know, in charge of an operations team, and they go, okay, what does that mean for me? Like, what am I supposed to do with that information, right? This is what I call kind of like a so what analysis, where like you're giving someone information around their problem, but it's not helping them to know what to do next to find a solution. Okay? You know, the way I think about data is like there are answers that are in your data, but they're hidden, right? And you actually need to search for them in a very intentional way. You need to decide, or you need to try and work out where you think the answer is, and you need to go and look for it, right? This kind of like looking at trends in the data is not a good way for finding an answer to a specific question, right? As I said, like in the metrics and in the KPIs, it's a very good way of detecting problems with your data, right? You want a broad set of metrics and KPIs so that you can see if there's a problem. But when you're trying to solve a problem, you don't just want to make generic graphs, right? Unless you really have no idea what's going on, you don't want to make generic graphs. You want to think about your problem, and then you want to make very, very specific graphs, okay? So this is how I'd get into this. So number one, so what I always do whenever I'm doing a piece of analysis is I try and not touch the data for as long as possible, right? What I want to do is like what I would call front load my thinking, right? Try and think through the problem as much up front before you ever even look at the data, right? When you start looking at the data and you don't have a clear idea of what the problem is, you just kind of get lost, right? You make a lot of graphs, but none of them are really making any sense, and they're not providing a solution, right? I would spend at least I try and spend as much time thinking about clarifying the question and developing some theories that I want to test, right? Before I would go into the data and start making some graphs, right? Normally what I do actually is I go for a walk. Normally, I live in Nairobi. I've got a little lap around my house. Whenever I've got a problem like this, I normally go and walk around for about half an hour and try and think through, how does this problem work? And what do I think the answer is going to be? What do I think the solution is going to be? So there's kind of two parts to this. Number one is to embed your analysis into the decision you're making, right? Passenger cancellation. When someone says they got a problem with passenger cancellation, the person in the operations team really there's only a few things that they can do about it normally, right? There's stuff that we can do on, number one, we can hire more drivers, right? That's one potential solution. If we have more drivers, then they're likely to be closer to their passengers. When a passenger makes a request, that might lower the passenger cancellation rate, right? That's number one. Number two, there are other reasons that you can come up with. Actually, I have them on the next slide for why passengers might be canceling, and you want to tie that to what solution or what decision that would mean for the person making the decision, right? So this actually, I'm going to go into this on the second slide of how to tie together what is the potential problem, what's the solution, right? And then you can actually give the decision maker some information on which of those different solutions is going to be better, or sometimes most importantly, which of those different solutions is not going to work at all, right? That's normally the first thing you can say with data is no, this isn't going to do anything, this might do something. All right, step two is developing theories, right? We'll go into this in the next slide of why passengers cancel. I think we have a few theories and some are quite well known. And then step three is once I have my theories, then I can test them in the data, or I can try and think of ways of testing them in the data. Often actually we find that some things are untestable. That happens quite a lot where it's we don't have a lot of information on this, it's very hard to get. Some things actually very highly testable. It really depends on the nature of the theory. Okay, and then once I've done these three, right, I'm essentially in a place where I already have it mapped out in my head, where I'm okay, if I find this in the data, I'm going to do A. If I find this in the data, I'm going to do B. If I find this in the data, I'm going to do C, right? Once I have that framework, I know that I'm going to get a solution when I go to the data. And so that's what you really want to have in mind before you start making graphs. Right. Okay, and then finally step 4, go to the data. All right, so clarifying the question. This is kind of something I already talked about, but how is this going to help someone make a decision? Normally, at a business, an NGO, anywhere, when you say passenger cancellation has gone up, right? That's not really your question. Your question is, how can I reduce passenger cancellation? And how can I reduce it, giving it the staff time and money that I have available, okay? So really that's what you're trying to work out is what's the best allocation of the resources that I have to be able to reduce passenger cancellation? And then we're going to try and work out, is something worth doing at all, and how should we allocate across the different solutions? Okay, yeah. Developing theories. So this is where you just want to use your knowledge, use your experience, right? This is how I'd always start this kind of question, and how I'd anyone that ever thinks of applying for SafeBoda that gets the analytics problem set, they get some data on passenger cancellation. I'd always start like this of thinking, why do passengers cancel, right? We've all used SafeBoda. I'm sure we've all cancelled with SafeBoda before, right? Start by making a list of why have I ever cancelled a SafeBoda before, right? I'm going to list out some of the reasons that I have. People, feel free to raise your hands if you have some good other reasons why you cancel SafeBoda. Okay, number one, and probably the most famous reason for cancelling SafeBoda is that drivers don't like cashless, right? Anyone that's on Twitter has heard this. I've definitely heard this. This does happen. Actually, the other day I had a SafeBoda that cancelled because he didn't like cash, which was the opposite of what we normally get. That's a new one, but that happened as well. So now sometimes we see that. Second one sometimes comes, driver is rude. It can happen. Third one, driver is too far away. This happens a lot, obviously, if you match the SafeBoda. Either you notice straight away you don't want to wait that long for the driver to come, or the driver calls you and says that I'm too far away and I can't come. And then number 4 could be like the driver does come, but he gets lost on the way. You know, he's circling around 3 kilometers away from you, and like you realize like this is not gonna, he's not gonna get here. I need a different safe border. I don't know if anyone wants to offer any other reasons for safe border cancellation. If you have any in the room, I think there are more than 4, but these are the first ones that I started with. Go ahead. Phone is off. Ah, that's a really good one. Yeah, I didn't have that one. We should put that on the bottom. We can actually think about that one in the next, how we could detect that with data. Any others on cancellation? Any other reasons you've ever canceled a safe border before? Tracy?
When the safe border doesn't show up with safe border equipment.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, when he shows up, and he doesn't have the safe border equipment.
Yeah, that happens. That might be a slightly specific problem to SafeBoda employees more than regular SafeBoda customers, but I believe that it happens as well. I don't like taking a ride if the SafeBoda is not wearing the right equipment. That's definitely true. I don't know if anyone else wanted to go. Okay, right, yeah. So, I mean, this is how I start. I start by listing these out, and I try and start thinking about how can I identify each of these in the data and try and work out how big a problem it really is. Get a sense of magnitude. Is it like, is this 1% of cancellations? Is this 50% of all cancellations, right? Okay, and for each of these, we can kind of come up with ideas for how we can do this, right? Drivers don't like cashless, right? We see that there are various identifiers in the data that we can see this. Customer requested trip is cash. What do I mean by that? Okay, I mean, yeah, drivers don't like cashless. We can see all of the cashless cancellations. That's number 1. Number 2 is like, we can also see if a customer cancels a cashless trip and then immediately reorders a cash trip a few seconds later, right? That's a really strong identifier that the driver has asked them to like reset the trip as cash. And then we can actually test this, right? We can look at what is the cashless completion rate, and we can look at the cash completion rate, and we can try and get a sense of how big a problem is this, and how much of this is just like a very specific problem with a minority of our users. Actually, this analysis that we've run a whole bunch of times, I said I was hoping to have some up-to-date graphs, which I don't. But I can tell you, like, cashless cancellation rate. So in general, the cashless cancellation rate is weirdly lower than the cash cancellation rate. The cash cancellation rate is actually higher than the cashless cancellation rate. In part, that's about like, I think a little bit about the distribution of where we get our cashless rides more than our cash rides. If you control for a whole bunch of other stuff, we can isolate this. The cashless cancellation rate is higher if you control for like where the request is, and the hour of the day, and a bunch of other things that affect cancellation. But in general, it's kind of like maybe like 1 or 2 percentage points higher for cashless than it is for cash, right? So I think there's like a common belief that it's like twice as bad for cashless. It's certainly not. It's not that big a difference. The second thing we notice about about this type of cancellation is that it normally takes a little while, right? We can actually look at how long, the amount of time between someone requesting and someone canceling, right? That's a really good identifier for maybe what the motive of the cancellation was, right? Normally these cashless cancellations, they take like 60 seconds at least, right? Because either the driver has to arrive or the driver has to call you and ask you if you're using cashless, right? And then they decide to cancel, or then they ask you to cancel. So this is actually one thing that we've identified, that the cashless completion rate is worse when we just restrict to the cancellations after 1 minute, right? We actually see a lot of for cashless completion, a lot of them are a bit longer than for the cash completion, right? These are all ways we can help like identify and understand the size of this as an issue. And then actions, like we've had different actions that we've tried to do to improve this. The main one is to incentivize drivers to use cashless more. So we have cashless points for the driver bonus. So drivers get, they get 20 points, I believe, for cashless, and only 8 for a cash. So the cashless rides help them get to their bonus more quickly, and they improve. And we're trying to improve the cash out options to make it easier for a driver to turn their cashless back into cash. All right, the other one I'll talk about quickly is driver is too far away. This we can identify really, really well in the data. We have very granular data on this, right? We can see where the driver is when they accept the ping, and we can see exactly where the customer is, where they make their request. And we can calculate the distance between the two. And we can see what is the different cancellation rate by passengers for the different distances. So we can get a really, really good estimate. And you see very, very strong very strong correlation. For every extra like 500 meters away a driver is, the cancellation rate goes up by about 2 percentage points. So this we know. If we had more drivers, right, on our platform, and when you ordered a Safe Boda, the Safe Boda was only ever 100 meters away, we'd have a much lower passenger cancellation rate. So this one we can also identify really well in the data. All right, driver getting lost along the way. Yeah, this is one where we can also look at cancellation time, right? We can identify this. Driver getting lost takes a bit of time, right? It doesn't happen quickly. It's naturally getting lost, takes a little while. So like we can have a look and see how long was it before the customer canceling, right? And we can plot out what fraction of our cancellations come after like 5 minutes. And we can see this is actually pretty small. The vast majority of our cancellations come, about 2/3 of them come within 30 seconds, right? And then only a very small minority of cancellations come after like 5 minutes. So this can tell us like drivers getting lost is not the main issue, right? You know, these other two are drivers. Cashless is a little bit drivers being far away is maybe the main one. And then driver is rude or not wearing the correct gear. These are both things actually where the data is like pretty hard, right? We don't observe this. We don't know about it. There are some ways that we can try and get some information on this. We have a comments data from customers, right? You can add a tag to your trip. You can give 1 star to the driver. These are ways we can try and understand this a little bit. We can also run surveys from our support team to try and work this out. But yeah, this is one that's like naturally a lot more difficult, right? Okay, all of this though, this is everything that I would do before I touch the data, right? So I would try and make this table and try and think it through. And then I go into the data and I try and see what are the magnitudes, right? And then I can come out of my analysis with a really strong recommendation for which of these solutions is most important, right? If we had, you know, $1, where would we spend it, right? Would we spend it on getting more drivers, or would we spend it on incentivizing cashless more, okay? Once I have this, then I know when I go to my data, I'm going to be able to like have some idea of that. So I think that's the main thing that I want to talk about today. Was like, and the main takeaway is like, whenever you're trying to solve a problem with data and you're trying to run analysis, I can't advise enough to like really try and clarify what your question is, what you're trying to solve, what you think your different solutions might be, and try and test each of them in the data, right? Don't just jump into the data and try and like poke around and hope that the data is going to reveal an answer for you. Go in, spend a bit of time, work out exactly what you're trying to find, and then go in really intentional and make your graphs, and then you'll be able to make a decision. All right, great. I don't know if anyone had any questions at the end of that. I also don't know how much time I've taken eating out of your metabase. Have a little look. Are we doing okay? About 40 minutes. Spot on. All right, did anyone have any questions on that? Anything from Zoom? Were you okay? All right, great. So in that case, I'm going to hand over to Alex. And have we got one?
So there's a question. Is Safe Boda trips data free to access? And if yes, how do I get access to that data? Oh, is Safe Boda trips data free to access? And if yes, how do I get access to that data? That's the question.
No, it's absolutely not free. Safe Boda trips data is pretty well protected. We don't share it with anyone. I don't know quite what this question means. Like for someone for their own rides, we don't have a mechanism for doing that. I know I've done it once with Uber. You can actually go and you can download your entire ride history from Uber. We don't have that yet. Maybe it would be nice to have, but yeah, we don't have it. You can get it on the app though. You can see your own trip history, right? So that's the best I think that we have.
I have a question myself.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess maybe it's more directed towards my experience using self-border. The riders are not really enthusiastic about the cashless thing, and it becomes a bit inconveniencing to order a ride and you have to keep canceling because they don't want to take you because you want to use cashless. So I don't know. From your analytics of the data, what do you think is the reason behind that, and maybe how can that be rectified?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd say number one, from talking with some drivers, you know, there's definitely like variation here. Some drivers like it and some drivers don't like it, right? I've spoken to drivers who say like cashless to them now is the same as cash, right? They really like, they trust it. They know that they can turn it into cash, or they know that eventually they'll be able to use it, right? So there's definitely like some drivers who don't mind at all. On the drivers that do mind, like, I think the main thing is, for a driver, they want to arrive home with money in their pocket, right? That's how that is how Boda Bodas have traditionally worked, and that's what they're used to, right? And Safe Boda is kind of different from that. They don't necessarily have money in their pocket, right? At the end of the day, sometimes they have the money on their Safe Boda wallet. So there's kind of two things that we've done to try and improve this. Number one is like incentives from our side, right? As I said, drivers get more points for cashless than they do for cash. So drivers win bonuses if they achieve a certain number of points in the day. So they receive a lot more points for cashless rides than for cash. And it's trying to incentivize drivers and help them out and say like, okay, if you do this cashless ride, you're going to get a little bit more from it. And then number two, which is a longer term solution, is building out our payments platform. So enabling drivers to do more with that cashless, right? So I mean, there's a few functionalities we already have. So one is they can buy fuel at a discount at a Shell garage. They could buy airtime with that cashless. And then we're going to try and like build more features for this, and we're going to expand the cash out options, right? Make it easier for a driver to take their cashless, and if they want, at the end of the day, turn it back into cash so they can go home with money in their pocket. Yeah, and then who knows, in future there might be more things that we'll add on to the platform that will help drivers. I spoke with a driver this morning who told me a really nice story about when he joined Safe Boda soon after cashless had been launched in like 2018. But in those days we had like a savings account with cashless as well. And he said he used this to like pay in to a savings account for like quite a long period of time. And I think it was with a third-party provider, with Prime Bank, I think he said. And like he eventually built up enough like of credit history with Prime Bank that they gave him a loan, and he built his house from that loan that he got from Prime Bank. So these are the types of features that we can like add on when we have drivers using cashless, and we like are able to build out our cashless payment system. So that's kind of a long-term solution for drivers. Yeah, go ahead.
You said something like formulating a theory. So I'm really wondering, is a theory like a statement you make, like if safe borders are cancelling, it means there is this. So maybe you could give an example of a theory regarding that, what you personally would come up with.
Yeah, so here, like my theories are my reasons, right? Sorry, so these are my theories of why Safe Boda is cancelling, right? I'm gonna link this back to like what I said at the beginning, the type of analysis we normally get. Cancellation is higher on Sundays. This is not a theory, right? Because Sunday is not the reason that the driver is cancelling, right? Or the passenger is cancelling. A passenger doesn't like wake up on a Sunday and be like, I'm gonna go cancel some Safe Bodas today, right? They're like, that's not the reason. That's just like a correlation in the data, right? The theory is like, you know, what is leading this, what is the reason why this passenger is cancelling, right? And then, you know, the important thing is that each of these, they lead to a different action on our side, right, for the decision maker, right? If the reason is cashless, then the action is going to do with improving incentives toward cashless, right? Whereas if the reason is the distance, then the action has to be something about improving the number of drivers that we have available at any given time. Right, did that help clear that up a little? All right, great. Shakib, do you want to come on and hand over? And I can try and do a little switcheroo on the laptop as well.
Sure, thank you very much. A round of applause for... Thank you. Round of applause for Simon. So that was a very interesting first session. I will take like a little break for a minute or two, and we'll be back with the next session. So for our next session, if you have a laptop, it's good for you to, it's going to be quite interactive and practical. So if you have a laptop, you should have it on hand. If you don't have a laptop, you can just sit next to someone who has one, and you can try and work in groups. And those at home, please try and follow along as well. Let's see if you can try and achieve some of the stuff that's being demonstrated today. So our next session is going to be by Alex and Edward. And it's really we're going to introduce you to one of the tools that we use here at SafeBorder, and that's Metabase. It's a really intuitive tool, and we'll be able to get quite a lot of use from it. I think they have some data they're going to demonstrate how it works. If you're here in the room, you can let your friends know to check us out on our social medias. We are streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook as well. So let them know to check us out. And without further ado, I want to get the second session started with Edward. Just handing over. Thank you.
Morning to everyone in here and those online. I'm called Edward Samuel Nabigwaku. I'm a BI at SafeBorder. I specialize in fraud analytics, whereby we build models that detect fraud in all our transactions. Yeah. Just a quick view about fraud. Like the previous speaker, Simon, said, how we detect or how we come up with these models, yeah? You first of all have to have theories, yeah? You set your theories before you deep dive into the data. Never go into the data first, because you're going to be biased, and at times you won't see the bigger picture, yeah? So for fraud and how we come up with these models, I, for one, I have a triangle called the fraud triangle, yeah, where all our rules, thresholds, and all the models are centered, yeah. And how we drive this, of course, we got the reasons why a driver could commit fraud, yeah. And of course, one of them is opportunity, yeah? So most of your models have to look at the opportunity, yeah? You have to know where to look, yeah? Once you see there's an opportunity to commit fraud, you look into that and see how the data you can pick that out of the data, yeah? That's one of the sides of the triangle, one of the edges, yeah? And then the other is behavior. Yeah? With behavior, we know you have to look at your drivers, you have to look at the community, yeah? We all know something like fraud has to happen, yeah? There's no community. I don't know if there's a community where there's no fraud, yeah? And then, of course, you have to look at the incentive. Is an incentive, is there